Ferrari isn't about to build an SUV, is it? Surely not. Well, that might be actually what's about to happen. Now in this video, I'll tell you why Ferrari has to start building an SUV now. And I'll show you exclusive renderings of what this new car could look like. And I'll show you these throughout the entire video. So stick around to make sure you see them all. Anyway, I'm Matt Watson and you're watching Car Wow. Ferrari is one of the most famous car brands in the world. It even has its own official theme park, for goodness sake. And all this success has come from Ferrari sticking to what it does best, building really fast cars. I'm talking about mid-engine supercars like the Enzo and the LaFerrari, and front-engine GT cars like the GTC4 Lusso and the 812 Superfast. These four cars all had one thing in common: an incredible, naturally aspirated V12 engine. Okay, so Ferrari has also made plenty of legendary cars with V8s, like the 488 Pista, but the V12 is what it's most famous for. But even though it's an iconic engine, Ferrari can't keep making them forever. Partly because cars with massive naturally aspirated V12s will never pass strict emissions tests in the future. Now Ferrari knows this, which is why it's put a load of effort and a load of cash into developing some new hybrid supercars. And there could be a new hybrid SUV on the horizon too. I know this sounds like blasphemy, but plenty of other sports car brands have shown it's possible to stick to their roots and build an SUV. Take Porsche for example. It used to make sports cars and nothing else, like the 911 and the Boxster. But last year, around 60% of all the cars Porsche sold were actually SUVs, like the Cayenne and the Macan. I guess this means Porsche is technically an SUV company that makes sports cars as a side hustle. And it's not the only one having a go at it. Bentley makes the Bentayga, Aston Martin has the DBX, and Rolls-Royce brought out the ultra-luxurious Cullinan. Okay, some of these brands are more known for their luxury cars than supercars, but you can't say that about Lamborghini, can you? This company made its name with bonkers mid-engine monsters, but its most popular new car is actually the Urus SUV. Last year, Lamborghini sold over 7,400 cars, and almost 4,400 of these were actually Uruses. So, it looks like Ferrari doesn't really have a choice. If it wants to compete with these brands, then it has to make an SUV of some kind. But what would a Ferrari SUV look like? Well, Ferrari has already been spotted testing a prototype. Okay, so this is still a very, very early test car. It doesn't have any Ferrari bodywork yet. Instead, it looks like it's been cobbled together using bits of a Maserati Levante. I guess Ferrari just used whatever bodywork it had lying around, so its test drivers wouldn't fall out of it. Anyway, this new SUV could be called the Purosangue, which is Italian for thoroughbred, a bit like a racehorse. And I reckon it could look a bit like this, what our expert designers have had created. Now, it could take inspiration from the latest Ferrari Roma or the all-new 296 GTB, so I reckon it'll look simpler and less angular than a Lamborghini Urus. But it'll still probably be even more imposing than most modern Ferraris. But what sort of engine is going to live under that curvy bonnet, eh? Well, Ferrari has plenty of options to choose from. It could go all out and stick in a 6.5 litre V12 like you get in an 812 Superfast. Now this engine is getting on a bit though, but it still cranks out a rather impressive 800 horsepower. And Ferrari already has a four-wheel drive system for the 6.3 litre version of this engine that came in the GTC4 Lusso. This is important because a proper SUV has to have four-wheel drive now, doesn't it? This would make the Purosangue one of the very few V12 SUVs on sale. At the moment, the only other SUV with an engine like that is the Rolls-Royce Cullinan. It has a 6.75 litre, that's the way they like to say it, not 6.75. Anyway, a 6.75 litre V12 with 570 horsepower, and it does 0 to 60 miles an hour in around 5 seconds flat. But there's another option. Maybe Ferrari could use the 3.9 litre twin-turbo engine from the Roma. This makes 620 horsepower, which is 30 horsepower less than you get in a Lamborghini Urus. So Ferrari will probably have to give it a bit of extra boost for its first SUV. Or it could go down a different route and maybe fit this V8 with a hybrid system and electric motors from the new 296 GTB. That new supercar uses a 3-litre V6 with 663 horsepower, but it also has an electric motor that boosts overall power output to 830 horsepower. This would mean the Purosangue could make almost 780 horsepower, which is around 140 horsepower more than an Urus. And that car's already seriously quick. In fact, it's one of the fastest SUVs I've ever driven. Anyway, back to the Ferrari SUV. Now, there is a problem with using the engines from the Roma and the 296 GTB then. Both of these cars rear-wheel drive. This means Ferrari would probably have to design a whole new four-wheel drive system for the Purosangue if it wanted to use these engines. But there's a fourth option that could be a lot simpler. Ferrari could borrow some parts from the 1000 horsepower SF90 hypercar. This has a larger 4-litre version of the Roma's twin-turbo V8 with 780 horsepower, but it also has 3 electric motors that add another 220 horsepower. One of these motors sits at the back and drives the rear wheels, but the other two, which make about 135 horsepower combined, drive the front wheels. Here's the clever bit. I reckon Ferrari could take these two motors and use them to drive the new SUV's front wheels. Then it could use the Roma's 620 horsepower V8 to drive the rear wheels. This would mean the new car could have around 755 horsepower. That's more than any other SUV on sale right now. Well, besides the Tesla Model X Plaid, of course, which has 1020 horsepower. Okay, so shoving a V8 engine and 2 electric motors under the bonnet would probably make Ferrari's new SUV quite long. But then, when has length been a problem for Ferrari? I mean, just look at the 812 Superfast. It should actually be called the 812 Super Vast. Anyway, I think the new SUV could look something like this. It will be the first time Ferrari has made a proper 4-door car, but you can bet it'll look even more dramatic than most fast SUVs from the side. If you're wondering what the rear might look like, stick around because I've got one more render to show you in a bit. But what about the interior? Let's move on to that first. You see, I reckon it'll take inspiration from the new Roma yet again. That car has Ferrari's latest swoopy cabin design, new touchscreen infotainment system, and all the latest tech you can get with Ferraris. But the back seats will probably be more like the ones in the GTC4 Lusso. So there is a chance that you could just have 2 seats in the back. However, they may offer a 3-seat bench option to make the car a bit more practical for those who need to carry more people. Anyhow, the new SUV will have a decent boot, more than any other Ferrari to date. And that brings us to the back of this new SUV, which I reckon could look something like this. Now, Ferrari used to give its cars big round brake lights, but its latest models have much flatter designs, so I think the Purosangue will have a similar design too. The finished car should get 4 real exhaust pipes, just like on this prototype, and there'll certainly be some kind of rear diffuser. But how much is all this gonna cost? Well, you can pick up a Lamborghini Urus from around £160,000, before options obviously, but this new Ferrari could end up being quite a bit more expensive, especially if it's a hybrid. And because it's a Ferrari, you might have to be invited to buy one, so that's me out then. But what do you think? Do you like the idea of a Ferrari SUV? Or do you think Enzo Ferrari is turning in his grave right now? Let me know your thoughts, comments below. Hope you'll enjoy the video. If you did, please give it a like. Click on those videos there to watch more content, and on that box there to go to CarWow to see how much you can save on a new car, or to just read our reviews and stuff. Just click it, do me a favour, yeah?